On this episode of the Workers Podcast, we'll take a look at occupational safety and health, also known as OSH. Now, no one should have to choose between their job and their well-being. From workplace hazards to mental health, from safety policies to workers' rights, we'll explore how we can create a safer, healthier workplace for all. I'm happy to have as my guest today Sister Hazel Luke. She's a Senior Industrial Relations Officer at the Antigua and Barbuda Workers Union, and she's also trained in occupational safety and health and is also a trainer in occupational safety and health. Sister Luke, I'm so happy to have you here on the Workers Podcast.
All right, I'm here again, Brother
Absolutely.
Anders.
All right, so
Okay.
let's start off. Explain for us, what is occupational safety and health? What do we mean when we hear about OSH, as we also know it? What does it cover, and why is it important for workplaces and, most importantly, for workers?
Okay. Simply put, occupational safety and health focus primarily on protecting workers in the workplace from injuries, accidents, incidents, also from harmful substances. Occupational safety and health is a very wide subject discipline because it also includes hygiene, there's a sanitation, and they all pertain to occupational, your safety, your
Yeah.
health and safety. So it deals with the health and well-being of all employees on the job.
All right, so what are some of the biggest hazards and risks that employees in Antigua and Barbuda may be exposed to? And I suppose it may vary from industry to industry.
Certainly it would, but some injuries are common in industries, trips, slips, falls, depending on how items are placed within the company. If a wire is placed across the floor, it's easy.
Yeah.
It presents a hazard and a risk to the employee. It's a hazard, becomes a risk that the employee could easily receive a serious injury.
Yeah.
But however, we do not have any certifiable data to say how many a year that this occur. What I could speak from would be what we handle as disputes, injuries on the job.
Okay.
So in hotel industry, yes, you'll have slips, trips, and falls, wet floor, and things like that, wet corridor, falls from what you call it, bad placement
Okay.
or layout of the space, or where they're working in housekeeping and so on. Those are common, I say, with every workplace, trips, slips, and falls. You can have incidents in kitchen, where cutleries and so on, hot pans and stove are just left careless, burners are left on, and things like that. You may have burns, would be one. Falls are very serious in all industries.
Okay.
Simply too because we do not place step up or step down when people are in offices.
Yes.
Everything, all the layout, everything looks the same color paint. And you are to differentiate. If you're going to have a step down, there should be a differentiation in the color of the tile or the painting. So if you don't have the sign up, the employee will know, okay, I'll have to step down, okay, or they quickly see there's a lift here and I have to step down if there isn't a sign. A lot of places in the workplace do not carry proper signs or direction and so on. The other thing that we see are injuries to hands because not enough training in handling certain machines and so on. We also have height work. We observe that a lot of persons in construction industries and so on, people work from heights, and some will ask for height pay and all of that risk pay, but that is inadequate if the layout of where the workspace is in scaffolding and so on are not placed properly. So we do have falls. We also have exposure to harmful substances like chemicals, persons who clean offices, and so on.
Okay.
But because we're not in the habit of reporting, some of these injuries go
Yeah.
unnoticed, or after a long period of time, an employee would say, I've been working for 10 years or 15 years in this particular area. I know I'm experiencing asthmatic conditions, sinuses, I have this, or I have chest pain constantly. But because protective measures aren't given enough PPE, we also observe in Antigua and Barbuda is not given.
Yeah.
But there's also a side to it that needs to look after employees too. Sometimes neglect using those PPE.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have inadequate PPE for the work that is being done.
Mm-hmm.
And even the union we have had quite a lot of issue too in ensuring that companies give the right PPE.
Yeah.
Sometimes the items are cheap,
Mm-hmm.
or they take a very long time in order to get the gears for employees. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of occupational safety and health in Antigua and Barbuda. And so now the Antigua and Barbuda Workers Union, it has always been a focus for us. And now with myself as one of the point persons for USH, we're ensuring that we grind that wheel
Okay.
now, one, in training and education,
Yeah.
and ensuring that we improve our health and safety clause within the collective agreement
Wow.
to strengthen it some more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one thing that's startling for me, based on what you just shared with us, is the fact that we just haven't been collecting the data. But I will come to that a little bit later. But what can you tell me about the laws in Antigua and Barbuda, and perhaps internationally, that govern or speak to the whole issue of occupational safety and health?
Well, one thing we have done, we have ratified convention, the ILO Convention 155, which is Occupational Safety and Health Convention,
Okay.
and the supporting convention of 187. 155 lay out all of the measures, provisions as to what should be done, employee responsibility, government.
Okay.
It's government responsibility, authority responsibility, employers, and of course employees as well. All the measures are laid out in that. And 187 is about the implementation of it, how it's supposed to be done. It's a supporting convention to that. We also have an Occupational Safety Act, I think of, is this 213. We have the Labor Commissioners Act, I think, which was revised 217. That is about giving the Labor Commissioner the right to inspect place. They can do inspection, though you have to give advance notice that you're coming into the company. And unions could do walkthrough as well. And then we have the Labor Code, of course, Section D of the Labor Code that speaks to occupational health and safety. There's also the Public Health Act.
Okay.
That would deal with, the health centers and the services and all of that is being provided to the masses.
Okay. So employers are legally required to provide a safe working environment for employees.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Once you open up a business, this you are compelled, and I use the word compelled. It's compulsory. You have no other recourse but to ensure you give a safe environment for your employees. Ensure that we don't do it a lot, though in Antigua, maybe a very few. Look at the layout of the business, proper entrance and exits, in case of anything, fire, you have the correct exits. We should not, when there's a building being constructed, the building code should ensure that the right entrance and exit is installed. The layout of the business so that workers are able to move in and through freely, or have right workspaces that do not enhance ergonomics but deal with ergonomics in a way because of workers, the way they sit. We have a lot of bad chairs still in workplaces that are not changed. Workers are sitting at the same desk in some businesses for over 40 years. You know, the layout of offices, the lighting, poor lighting, a lot of people wearing glasses, the environment, poor air quality, and that we will be dealing with in our upcoming workshop at the end of
Okay.
March. So the employer is incumbent, and they should not be excused to have a safe working space so the people who are coming in. That's capital, your investment.
Yeah.
You must take care of labor. Labor is going to utilize that capital so that you could make a profit. So there's a fiduciary responsibility to employers.
So, what rights do workers have if they feel, for example, that they're not in a safe working environment?
Well, even in our Occupational Safety Act, in the labor code, I can't remember what section it is off my head now. If a worker feels that his or her life has been threatened, or the task which has been given to them endangers his or her life, then they can refuse to do that work.
Okay.
So no one is forced to, or in captivity to do something that endangers his or her life. Yes, the law gives that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not feel comfortable in doing this because I feel it challenges my life. I think I'm going to get hurt by doing this. An employee can refuse at that time.
So under no circumstances should an employee feel compelled uh, to keep working in an unsafe
That's
situation or
right.
environment.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. No employee should feel compelled to work in an environment that continues to cause or pose any danger to his or her life, because the law requires safety
Yeah.
when you go to work.
Yeah.
And if that safety is being threatened, then the employee can refuse or bring it to the knowledge of the employer. If they refuse, of course, you have, of course, industrial actions that you could take where that is concerned. But that is over time if that is not being done. But immediately, though, if a
Yeah.
task is given to you and you observe it, that one, you could lose a limb, could
Yeah.
lose something, dangerous could happen to you. You could, refuse.
And I imagine that that's in some circumstances, workers, they don't want to be problematic, right? And say, for example, some may be immigrants, whatever their situation may be, and just not wanting to be problematic or anything, they tend to work on, they tend to go along with these risks. But how can workers really advocate for themselves? Because that's what it really is. How can they advocate for safer and work environments?
First of all, whether a worker is Antiguan or non Antiguan by birth, a worker is a worker is a worker.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so the laws of the country where you work applies to you. You
Oh.
can't work in Antigua and another law elsewhere apply to you. This is where you are, your duties are being done.
Yeah.
The best way for workers to ensure their safety is always to have a collective agreement, have the protection of the union, because outside of that, you're exposed. Not that the law would not support you,
Yeah.
but when you work at something collectively, there's more force and you have greater ability in having it addressed. So I would encourage, while on a singular level, that if you are confronted with a dangerous job, you should refuse. Collectively, if the danger of even one employee or one employee is at risk, then other employees should ensure that none of them is put at risk at a later time.
Yeah.
Once it's done to one, the possibilities are it will be done to many other within the workplace.
Yeah.
But having the support of a union is recommended.
Absolutely. Now, share with us, I know you touched on some of it earlier, but share with us some more about what we have been doing at the Antigua and Barbuda Workers Union. as far as supporting and advocating for better health and safety?
Over the years, we have been conducting specific occupational safety and health for each sector of our sectors. And a lot of our concern was based on the hotel sector
Mhm.
because it's a larger sector, and two, a lot more happens within because of the nature of their work that is required, especially in housekeeping, maintenance, the kitchen area, and so
Yeah.
on. More recently, we have been engaged or will engage our workers in training to ensure that they too take more responsibility because
Mhm.
workers have responsibility as well for their own self to ensure that they do not endanger their lives, that they give the right training if they have to use an equipment
Yeah.
of some sort or have been exposed to new tasks that they're not aware of. So we have increased now our occupational safety and health,
Mhm.
which now is inclusive of poor air quality
Okay.
in the workplace as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yes.
Share with us some more about the issue of poor air quality. And
I'm
I
not
know you've done extensive research and have extensive experience in this area.
research, and one of my papers was on poor air quality for workers.
Mhm.
And during that research, I mean, I was bowled over at the amount of things that could happen to us
Mhm.
within an environment where the air is not clean. And while I would not claim any expertise on that, but have
Mhm.
knowledge, because we
Mhm.
have someone in our home of Antigua and Barbuda that has great knowledge on that, on which we'll be leaning on
Yeah.
to help us with the training. If it is that we're working in a space where the air condition is not being cleaned,
Mhm.
where the place is not properly cleaned, and cleaning is a very important thing in a workplace because if you have someone cleaning using the same dirty mop, all that is happening, you are increasing
Yeah.
bacteria,
Yeah.
a breeding ground for viruses, and what we are inhaling is interfering with our lungs.
Uh-huh.
We can develop respiratory issues.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking at it outside of COVID, before COVID, a lot of people within their workplaces were suffering from a lot of itchy throat, sinus, asthma, and their
Mhm.
complaint would be, Mrs. Luke, I was fine before I started working at this place.
Yeah.
So that means there's something happening. And if the place is closed up and the windows are not opening up, then all we're doing is circulating the same bacteria, same virus, same microbes, same everything within that same environment. There's no clean air entering in.
Mhm.
So we are happy to be able, the Antigua and Barbuda Workers Union, now to be bringing that more to our workers so they too have a responsibility in terms of their own health care, in advocating
Mhm.
for cleaner environment to
Yeah.
work in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And tell us about some of the simple measures
Mhm.
that workers can take to ensure their safety and to minimize incidents and injuries on the job. What can you tell us about that?
It is important for workers to have safety committees
Hmm.
now, health and safety committees. Call it by whatever name, it has to deal with safety. If you want to say health
Okay.
committees, health and safety, or safety committees,
Yeah.
that's one of the first steps that workers could get themselves involved with.
So these are worker-led committees, you're
Worker led
saying? Okay.
committees. Once you have
Mhm.
um, even without a union, a collective bargaining, which would most often be negotiated, that
Mhm.
within that we need to have a health
Okay.
and safety committee.
Yeah.
Workers too can do some things for
Hmm.
themselves as well,
Yeah.
you know. Also, that's one, having safety committees. Two, refusing to work in hazardous areas
Hmm.
and hazardous conditions or use tools that you have not been trained with. So
Hmm.
workers could also lobby for better working spaces if it's cramped.
Okay.
If you're working in an area where all boxes are, they could tumble on you. So safe workspaces as well. They could object to
Hmm.
not working in safe workspaces. In staff meetings, the workers should be allowed to bring forward their concerns about their working environment and place them on the table and have fruitful and open discussions. And of course, there's the avenue of the Labor Department.
Yeah.
Complaints could be made to the Labor Department, and Labor Department, of course, have the right to inspect. And as we say, they must, of course, they can give advance notice to the employed that we are preparing to pay your visit.
Yeah.
Well, at least maybe some will do some work before they get there to look good.
Yeah.
But they could, have they have an inspectorate that should be actively, be in operation and utilize that. So if a worker make a complaint that, hey, we're working in hazardous, we'd like you to come and look at it. So those are some areas that workers as well could
Yeah.
do for themselves to be proactive
Correct.
in terms of their own health and safety.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to us a bit more about the importance of training and education in occupational safety and health. And I know several months ago, in particular, the port workers had an opportunity to receive some training in that area. And I can't tell you how much they spoke about how beneficial that training was for them on the job.
Yes, that was an ITF OSH app training, and that was to ensure workers are keenly aware, not just be aware, but keenly aware of the environment, because the port could be a hazardous environment to
Yeah.
work with. And with them being aware, or being given them information on the app, they could consult that information all the time and to see the do's and don'ts,
Yeah.
what is not being practiced correctly, and draw that to their managers or help their co-workers in the same light to practice health and safety, um, measures and so on. So they having received that information are now very much aware. They interact with me. They pay attention to every single thing that is taking place in the environment. So education and training elevate the awareness. They let people be more aware of the environment where in the past they would not have paid attention to that, and would be able to call out situations and say this is incorrect. This could cause the death of a colleague, myself, or a colleague. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted also to say that it's important that employers engage. As a matter of fact, they're obliged to identify hazardous, do risk assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, either monthly or quarterly. If quarterly is the best time for them to have look at the assessment, look and see what is out of place, what what potential hazards are in the workplace, and so on. Have thorough examination of the workspace so that the workers can always be able to perform their duties in a very clean and so on, decent environment. So it's incumbent really on all employers. Once you have a business, whether it's one employee to 25 employee, in the Trinidad National Health Policy, they claim once you have 25 employees, you must have an OSH officer or HSE officer must be there in order to be able to help management carry out the risk assessment, have a risk management policy in place so that workers are able to perform their duties. That is lacking in its operation in many of our businesses, and we really should do something about it.
And I suppose as we as a union continue to advocate for these things and workers continue to raise their voices on these issues, that we too will see some progress as far as including things like OSH officers as part of the whole HR and management mechanism in the workplace.
Yeah, to call someone an OSH officer just to say have a name, it's not just that. You have to look at the entire operation, complexities of the workplace, and ensure that you're on top of every single thing. have reports, constant reports, log information, report information. That is important. And all workplace must have a record of all injuries, whether it's accident, incident, or a near miss. Because a near miss will say, oh man, I nearly died. That does not mean that the danger still does not exist. To nearly die is a serious thing. I mean, it means that there is that the employees have been placed at risk consistently for something, and it needs to be changed. So it's important that all workplaces, bar none, whether it's one employee to 25 to 40 to 100 employee, that safety measures are put in place, and the labor department should be able to go and examine that those safety measures are actually in place and they're operating, and injuries are logged in a book. The reason why we don't have proper statistics or verifiable data is because records aren't sent. Records should be sent to the labor department, or labor department should be able to access all of the injuries in that workplace in 1 year. Or within a 6 months to a year. 10 injuries, that's a lot in 6 months. Even 2 injuries, depending on the gravity of that injury, still would be too much in that workplace.
Indeed. It comes back to a whole question of data collection, as we mentioned earlier. Now, as we wind down our conversation, what are some of the key thoughts that you like to leave with our audience, that our audiences should remember with regards to occupational safety and health?
The workplace is our day home, and I say our home because we spend more hours on the workplace than we do at our very own home. And we have to ensure that the individual, which is the employee, has access to a safe, clean, healthy environment to demonstrate their abilities and talents. Anything short of that, you're undercutting the ability of any worker to perform, because the environment is not conducive to that employee doing its best. And half the time when we complain of lack of productivity, those are some of the underlying causes. The environment is not conducive. So people are working extremely hard in an environment that is not healthy for them. So we would, from an Antigua and Barbuda point of view, encourage all employers, if you have not been doing it, to join with us, partner with us in ensuring that your employees are trained, and to ensure that the proper PPE and all the mechanisms are in place for a healthy working environment where there is justice, there is equity for every single person. So that's it.
Right. Well, thank you again, Sister Luke, for being a part of the Workers Podcast and for sharing your knowledge on occupational safety and health, a very important issue for workers and for anyone involved in the world of work.
Thank you.
Again, this has brought us to the end of another episode of the Workers Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Do remember to join us again next week.